Hello, hello. Hey, Bill. How's it going? So, we are gathered here today to try and paint a few minis. And we're a little ambitious today because I have three D&D characters that I want minis for. One of them I'm probably not gonna play anytime soon, so I'm probably gonna start with that one. And the other two is one that may be retiring soon and be replaced by the third one I'm gonna look at today. So to introduce them, this dwarf here, he's at a very crooked angle because he has not yet been glued to his base. Because I tried 3D printing a sort of kind of complex or detailed whatever base here, and I didn't want to paint him on because then it's going to be a hell to actually paint both the base and him and everything. So I'm painting him by hand, which will be, well, I'm painting all of it by hand, but I'll be painting him by holding on to his one boot here, the rearmost boot, which is going to be the least visible. So I'm basically just going to be holding him like this while painting, which is going to be terrible but fun. Oh, I should introduce who he is. He is... basically, I'm going for a complete archetypal dwarf here. Classic fantasy dwarf. Cleric. It's called Drun Rockborn. He will be a 4th cleric, and when I'm starting him, he's probably going to be level 4. Unless we gain a level before we're playing. So anywho, that's who he is. His main goal in life is basically to run around, cast spirit guardians, and make life miserable for monsters and bad guys. And he's the guy who's going to be mounted on this very rocky base because he is a mountain dwarf. Next up, we have my Thiefling Paladin that I played up to 4th level, who is probably about to be retired and replaced by Drun, the dwarf we just met. This guy's called Nobody, which is a part of his Paladin Order's way of naming and promoting their members. Seeing as he is still very young, still very new to the glorious art of battling evil, fighting bad guys, killing monsters, he hasn't really deserved his name yet, so he's just called Nobody. He also have a real name, which is Secret. But yeah, basically he was someone I wanted to do because going back to being a player in my real life group instead of a dungeon master, I wanted to try something I have not tried in about 25 years. Oh, hello Em, glad to see you. How is the leg? Is it getting better? So Nobody is a vengeance cleric. He's not that much into healing because it's so much more fun to just kill off the bad guys before you really get to the we need healing part. So he's just trying to, make his way through the world. He's not as such evil, but his moral compass is a little off. Normally, a lot of people seem to think that paladins are automatically good guys, but this guy here is more lawful to his we have to kill devils. This has landed him in a whole lot of trouble in our current campaign. I think I'm pretty sure we've gotten the same hook a couple of times by now. Yeah, but he's not really a dark paladin, Emily. Said dark paladins can be super cool. He's kind of just dedicated to killing off fiends and devils. So basically, when our DM tried going for you have to work with this demon person who came up and talked to you, then you kind of just blanked out and attacked her instead. And when we finally got a little bit of information about what was going on, it was kind of one of these, you have to stop this demon god from entering the world, and that will be really bad and terrible and horrible. He kind of went, yeah, I don't want demons to go in, but I'm also kind of like level 2, so I'm just gonna go back to my order and say, hey, we got a problem here. I'm not gonna be working with a fiend or a devil because they're just gonna trick me and all that. He's got a lot of atonement to do in his mind, at least on behalf of his bloodline. He's a tiefling after all, so at some point in his past, some distant ancestor made some kind of pact with a devil, demon, whatever. So he's not gonna make that mistake again and curse the rest of his bloodline. So he's not working with demons. That's caused a bit of a problem, I think. Which is also why I'm considering pulling him out of the game. So the replacement would either be Run, the dwarf cleric we saw, or this guy. I made all 3 of these in Hero Forge earlier today and 3D printed them this afternoon, rinsed them, painted them and so on just before the stream here. And actually my compressor for my airbrush decided to act up. I think it sprung a leak somewhere in the control valve that handles the pressure output. So it kept leaking. So yeah, that's why I'm a little late to start. However, this one here is called Nema Nevermore. He's also technically a cleric, but not that much cleric-y after all. Basic thing is that he, the way I built him is that he started off with 1 level in cleric, and then he took 3 levels in rogue. All of them are going to be level 4 because they're replacing nobody who's level 4. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to have some access to some of the cleric powers and cleric spells, and I also wanted to be a frigging backstabbing, backstabbing dark cleric. So he's in the trickster domain. I can't remember all his stats, but who cares? That's not really interesting. Concept is he's actually gonna talk about himself as if he is a priest or cleric of this. What the hell is the god called? Odalin? Can't remember. Anyway, the trickster god in the Greyhawk setting. So basically, he's just gonna be kind of a nasty assassin, absolutely no moral scruples whatsoever, except for his god. And a trickster god don't so much have rules as they tend to break rules. So because of that, I made him fairly simple. I wanted to do some characters that did not brandish weapons all over, because sometimes you have a sword, sometimes you have a mace, sometimes you have a warhammer, sometimes you carry a shield, sometimes you don't. Nobody is full-on cleric, sword and shield cleric, and he's paladin, sword and shield paladin. He's just gonna go off the rails. So I gave him weapons, but both the dwarf and this dude here, who's somewhere in beneath his hood, is actually a half-elf. But they're basically gonna be without, brandishing weapons, simply to make them more relatable also in a role-playing setting. I mean, this is not how nobody walks around in town, but I just felt it would look cool to make a tiefling, going at it, sword and shield style. And again, the dwarf here is really just, yes, we will fight for mighty Moradin. He may be a little, inspired by a certain dwarf cleric we know from the Diamond Head campaign. So it's not a full rebuild of Kazakh, but I mean, he's a dwarf forge cleric, not far off. So basically, I think just to get started, I'm gonna go with him. And since he's an assassin, sneaky cleric, monk, no, not monk, that's actually a class, but cleric, priesty, I'm a very bad kind of person. I think I'm just gonna go with mostly black, with a little highlights, or maybe some leather straps in dark leather or something like that. It's gonna be really dark to look at, so might be an idea to do some aggressive highlights here and there. But first, a sip of water. So Emily says, good rule of thumb, don't work with demons. Yep, absolutely. That was a while ago when I was talking about nobody, but definitely don't. What we're going to try here is actually just, instead of painting him black and then going back up, we're just gonna slap a very nice coat of ink, shade, whatever on him. So how's the camera angle? Yeah, kind of looks good. Let's see how this goes. See, when I said I wanted to make him, black with, dark leather straps and all that, I also really don't want him to become so dark that you can't see the details anymore, which is why I want to actively go for the shades instead of paint. Well, shades are just very thin paint. And the reason for this is to cover everything in a blackish tint, but use the Sentinel Highlight that I almost always do to emphasize the shadows and lit up raised areas. And then hopefully the Sentinel Highlight combined with the shade is gonna look good. And it may even be a really quick paint job if it works. Then I can just do this for the majority of the miniature. What do we have here? We have Brit incoming. Slap him, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, welcome, Brit. So what are you up to today, Brit? Now that you've taken another very long walk earlier. Brit said she slept on the couch. You know what? That is well deserved. Besides, it is. I guess you're on vacation from work these days as well, which is cool. Okay, so he might need a second coat of shade in a little bit, but overall the effect seems promising, which is awesome. I remember doing this to a miniature many years ago, when I just painted up someone. I started by, I think I just started by dry brushing it really heavily in white all over, and then just gave it different colored shades, and I felt it looked really good, but for some reason I just got away from that technique again, which is really sad because the concept works. And I've seen other people do it with great success. So basically what we have here Oh, Emily, you have the greatest boss in the world. You can sit and watch streams at work. That's absolutely cool. Let me know if you have any openings. maybe, I mean, if your boss is paying you to watch my streams, maybe your boss would like to pay me to actually do the streams. And then you could get paid for watching them. That, I think that would be super cool. So anyway, a spaceman. That's actually, it does have kind of a spaceman-y look to it. I gotta give you that. But yeah, basically the idea is that it should be leather, hardened leather with various straps all over. But yeah, I'm just gonna drop the miniature because that's always an important part of the painting process. No, what I'm gonna say is I'm just gonna patch it up a little in here. I have missed a part of his groin, which you never should. It's bad form, that's rude. Then I'm basically just gonna leave him to dry and then get on with the other ones. Yeah, I know it is a little tricky to see, Brett, on the camera and focus, lack of focus and all that, but I absolutely agree. He's very much got the kind of not fully Space Marine look, but definitely some kind of armored. Oh, Emily, thank you. You're subscribing at tier 1. Thank you so much. 7 months. And yep, absolutely, Brit. Never neglect the groin. Thank you, Emily. So, but anyway, the shade, since it's thinner, takes longer to dry. So it's gonna stay over there so we don't mess him up. Then we can get working on the base. As I said earlier, you know, the early birds like Bill, who joined from the very beginning. We're painting 3 miniatures today. A paladin. Oh, your boss gave me some permission to sub. You definitely have the best boss ever. Beef up those buttocks. Yeah. So next up we have the base for. He is there. Brun Rockborn. Dwarf Forge Cleric. Yes, that's definitely Kazakh, as I also said before. But I 3D printed this base because I wanted to give him a cool rocky base. I can't remember where I got it. I will try and find it again. Leave it a link in the description when I upload it to YouTube later on to give credit where credit's due. We have little skull here as well, some bones. I'm gonna fill those in later, but it's basically just gonna go the classic. What do we have it? Where's my paint? Where's all my paint? Someone did not clean up my paints properly last time, so I am out of gray paint. Which is odd. That was there we have to paint. Right. And always, as always, I should give a shout out to Adrian von Ziegler, who is very, very good musician who allows people to use his music for free on non-profit things like and streams like YouTube streams and Twitch. I think that's really cool. It's a very nice thing for him to do. Like a pro, well, I'm getting paid for this. It's strange. I'm not getting used to that, but I guess I'm theoretically pro painter then. Medium. I actually a while back finally got around to putting small metal balls into all of my paint, you know, all the small dropper bottles, like this. You actually just barely see them in the medium here down there. Those 2 shadows, you can see 2 metal balls that really help shaking up both paints and mediums. So I prefer using mediums than mediums over water when painting with the paint, if I don't want to shade it, because it flows better but retains kind of a, I don't know, elasticity or whatever that really makes it easier to paint and spread the paint thin in an even layer. And yeah, okay, so John also has done the adding shaker balls, agitators, I think the current term for them is. So adding agitators to your paint bottles greatly enhances the way they work when you're just shaking them to get the pigment properly distributed throughout the bottle. So yeah. And when I finally got around to doing that, I went, from past experiences, I just went and got some of the ones and got these ones. And when I was in the shop, this bottle or container, whatever, looked really small. So I figured I better get 2. And I'm glad I did, because now I have an infinity of metal balls that I can throw at people. Which I, of course, never would. You shouldn't throw ball bearings, metal balls, anything at people, of course. And I'll just wait patiently for Brit to come up with some kind of ball-related joke. Put them on the floor for a booby trap. Yeah, see, the thing is, Emily, I live alone. So, well, I do have 2 cats. But living alone means that the booby trap would basically only be myself, because I think the cats would evade them. So... yeah, but the cats... Yeah. But no, the cats are clever, unlike me. So I would walk on the balls and trip and fall down and everything, and the cat would just walk around without tripping over them and probably just laugh at me. Oh, when I leave the house, yeah, and then when I get back home, I just pick up all the balls. Is that the procedure? I mean, that's clever. I should actually rebuild. Well, I live in a flat, not a house, but still, I could rebuild it to be a fully working dungeon, and just reset it and everything whenever I leave. Wouldn't that be cool? I could also employ, I don't know, a couple of goblins or whatever to keep, I mean, I should definitely have some goblins, because someone has to keep the dragon in line. Just mixing up the paint. I've not been painting a lot, so most of my paints are, even though I do shake them a little bit, I don't have time to just shake them for 2 minutes straight. And so it kind of sort of gets either really thick or really thin at the top, depending a little bit on which paint it is, with brand and so on. But this one here, the gray one I use, is fully clocked. It was almost impossible to recognize it as paint when I poured it out, so it was so thick. So I'm just thinning it down a little bit on my lovely wet palette. Oh, Brit says, yes, there it is. There we have it, the incorrigible humor. You should always pick up your balls when you get home to the dungeon. That is good advice. I'm guessing that means you're not bringing your balls on dungeon crawls? Or get home to the dungeon. Oh yeah, so you use them there as well. What are you doing outside of the house that don't require balls? That is... It's a very, very important philosophical question right there. I think that got most of it. M says, I don't require balls for anything I do. Okay, so you don't play any kind of ball-related sports, I guess, or foosball or anything like that. That is good to know. No baseball, no basketball. That is true. Balls are not required. Okay. It's almost dry, but we'll leave that one away. Now, on to... Wait, did he actually dry up? Nope. That's not clearly visible. But no, the deep recesses of his hood, that's actually still glistening, so that's still wet paint. So we're gonna leave him just a little bit, but I do like the effect. Oh, yeah, Emily says that if she tried sports, she'd probably end up hurting herself, and we cannot have that, Emily. We want you in one piece. So, what are we going for here? I'm thinking bright colors. I'm thinking, bright blue cape, some metal on the shoulder pads. Emily used to play soccer, but that was a long time ago. I never played soccer in a club or anything like that. But the occasional game at school or whatever, I never got the hang of it. It just never made sense to me. So yeah, and also I think we can see here that I'm a little bummed about both right now and will be later, but it's actually so difficult to see that I hadn't spotted until now. If you look at his left leg here, it's kind of off and it's really short, and that's because there must have been some kind of mistake when I printed this miniature, so I probably have to redo him. You see this flat area here. Focus a little bit better. That's basically a misprint. So his entire knee is missing. I should not paint him. That's really not worth it. I'm gonna redo the miniature at a later point. The base seems fine though, and the others went fine, and they were printed in the same batch, so just gonna stick to those. I'm not entirely sure how and why that happens, but I don't know, it just does. So for nobody here, we're basically going for plate mail, which means dry brushing in metal almost the entire miniature, and that's always nice to do, I think, because that lets you paint a lot of surface really fast. Let's go for a trusty old gunmetal. That's a darkish metal, which I like to do when I'm dry brushing, because dry brushing, especially on a slightly brightened surface like I've done here with the Sentinel Highlight, and I like to actually have some some darkness in the metal color, whereas silver would be so bright that it almost loses the sort of metallic, not the metallic shine, the silver's got plenty of that, but it will miss a lot of the sort of grittiness, the grayness of metal. Almost going to be white and shiny on the silver. So yeah, and why don't we... I would like to use one of the makeup brushes, but I think doing it with this, I'm not going to be able to control it well enough to avoid his face, and yeah. Just gonna go... Where are all my paint brushes? There it is. Yeah. Good old banged up, smashed up dry brushing brush. Okay, Emily's gonna be right back. Enjoy. I bet that's your boss saying you now actually have to work a little bit. But anyway, I will see you later, Em. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're back before I'm done. Britt, what did you play yesterday at the Bastard Cafe? Just Biotopia, the butterfly game, or did you get around to another game as well? Okay, this brush may actually be too rough to really dry brush with. That's strange. Probably just dead by now. Let's go with another one. When I started dry brushing with that paintbrush right now, I could just feel that the bristles basically didn't budge at all, which means that it'll be scraping over the miniature, potentially removing the paint underneath, the base coat, and that is not something you want happening. It has potential for really messing up the miniature. And also, since I've done the Sentinel Highlight, I can see that I need to shade the armor afterwards. So it's actually going to be a pretty heavy dry brush. With a brush that doesn't seem to leave any paint behind on the miniature. That's annoying. I need to paint more. Yes, of course we missed you, Emily. We always miss you. Okay, so dry brushing with metal colors, which is really kind of a heavy dry brush to do. And doing that on a 3D printed mini really makes the layers, the small lines you get from the printed layers, really emphasizes those. So some black shade afterwards to even it out just a little bit. And again, I have to remind myself that we are going for tabletop ready miniatures, not competition level miniatures, which I would never be able to paint anyway, so why try? This is just, it just has to look nice, shiny and metallic on the table. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how clear it is. Thank you, Emily, for calling me a good painter, just like John. I think John is a better painter than I am because he's more patient than I am. I never, or rarely, get around to just getting all the details just right. I'm more sort of a slap paint on, get it done. Unless I get a fixation on something, then I can spend way too long on really small details. Like on the Chaos Warrior I did a year ago, I think now, where I decided that he should have purple spikes, that I wanted to come out really, really well with the highlighting, all that. I spent 3 or 4 hours just painting a couple of spikes on his body. But it was fun and I learned a lot from it. And Emily's suggesting that I should enter a competition at some point. I don't really know. Hey, good enough party! Welcome to the painting. I forget, is that? Yeah, that's John. I was just about to say. Okay, so this is just not the time where I want to go speak of the devil, since I'm John. I'm painting an Oath Vengeance Paladin who's really got it in for devils and demons. I am painting, as I said, a Oath of Vengeance Thiefling Paladin. He's called Nobody because he is still so young and untrained that the order he's in, the order of the Templars of the Burning Blood, they don't feel that he has earned his name yet. So he's out in the world battling the minions of evil, blah blah blah, to get his name. However, this has caused problems because our DM seemed to give us a plot where the core starter for the plot was that nobody should overcome his reluctance to even speak with demons or devils. Reluctance being defined as, here, taste my sword. So I think I was supposed to actually speak to this demon person, woman, whatever, that suddenly showed up to give me a warning or something, but I keep attacking her. And I mean, as Emily so rightly said, you should never ever make deals with demons. That goes for devils, fiends, anything like that as well. And nobody knows this. I mean, he's grown up in an order dedicated to killing fiends and devils and demons. So sending in a devil for him to speak with. The base is one I downloaded from somewhere. I just searched for miniature bases, fantasy, whatever, and a couple of these came up. And So that was pretty cool. The miniature is from Hero Forge. It's really nice. I mean, it's fairly flat on top, so it doesn't really get nitty gritty around the miniature, but then it has sort of the raised rock base that is standing on, which adds a lot of detail, a little bit more oomph, but without kind of spilling into the miniature, if that makes sense to you guys. It makes sense to me, so cool. But John, definitely, if you like it, I can just, at least I can definitely send you the STL files, because they're free to download, so yes, it shouldn't be a problem for me to send it, but I'll try to find the actual link and post it in Discord later on. It's gonna be fun when we get to the skin, because in my description of Nobody, I've specified that he has maroon skin. So that's gonna be fun. Right, hang on, he's also got a shield that I'm not even painting. I'm actually consciously avoiding the shield, which is stupid, because the shield should always also be metallic. At least I'll start it out metallic and then I'll do some details later on. If I can find a decal, like a Blood Angels logo, they've got the blood drop. I'm probably gonna go for that. That way I don't have to freehand anything. But I might just give it a go. John says, nice, it just bought some cool bases in a Kickstarter. Way too many things to print, but nice to have for inspiration. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's the good thing about 3D printing. You don't have to print it all. Just have them lying around, and then, you know, a couple of years from now, when you're making a new character or whatever, DMing and want to throw something nasty at your players, then you just remember, oh wait, I have this really cool base for something that just fits correctly, and then it's just go find it, print it out, and Bob's your uncle. But have you actually gotten the Kickstarter yet, John? Or is it just one of those pay now and then at some point way out in the future when they're done with all the bases, then you get them? That's cool. So I'm just gonna leave the inside of the actual inside of the shield. I'm gonna leave that mostly sort of dark blackish, but just highlight the edges real quick. And try to add a little bit of contrast to the mini, so when it's standing on the table, it's not going to be any sort of shininess. It took you, John says, took about 2 months to get the Kickstarter. That's decent for a Kickstarter. If it's something they do to see if there's an interest in people paying them enough to actually put in the hard work of making the bases, then it's cool that they can finish it in 2 months. Good for them, good for you. So yeah. Okay, so probably not very clear that he is now fully metallic. Yeah, you should be able to see it, compared to the base at least, that he is more sort of shiny gray. As I said, I am gonna slap on some black shade on the boots. His boots need more highlighting. Or dry brushing, whatever. His boots need to be more metallic. I'm actually hoping that if he stays in the game, and if we ever actually arrive in Greyhawk City, or another suitably large business town, then I really, really hope I'm allowed to give him an adamantine armor. I would very much appreciate that. And the Kickstarter was Asgard Rising. Sounds very Nordic, Viking-y themed. I can post a link if you want to check it out. Oh yeah, sure. By all means do. Always, as I said, for inspiration, it's always great to have these things. And if it's still possible to order them, then I might actually do that, because ordering the bases, having them separate from the mini is something I think I would like to be able to do. Then I'm not too locked in, especially with places like Hero Forge, where when you buy a miniature, then it's, if you add a base to it, then you cannot change the base later on. So these ones here, all three of them, I ordered from Hero Forge without bases on. And I need to just copy out that link so I have it somewhere. There we go. Oh, I can see a very, very lovely forest, woodland base with mushrooms, a lot of fallen leaves, rocks, more mushrooms, kind of bulky mushroom, sort of clump group, whatever. And it says 1,000+ pre-supported STL files for 3D printing. Oh yes, I definitely need to go look at that. That is awesome. Thank you, John. So, what next for this dude? Oh yeah, a trick again for painting quickly is to not sit and talk while you're painting. So I'm naturally gonna jump right into talking now, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put down some dark leathery colors on the straps and the belt and parts of the, not really a full sheath, but just the holster, I guess, for the dagger. Just to add a little bit of coloring to his armor, but not too much, because I don't want that. The front down here, he has got some strips, whatever, hanging down in front. I may make those red actually, but his skin is also going to be red, so I don't know. I'm probably just going to leave it. But just give a little bit of sort of contrast and color, and I'm missing all the right words today. I'm on vacation. I'm allowed to not be able to speak. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna do the shading until after I've done the leather. I'm also gonna do the face and tail, because they're gonna be maroon, and I've actually learned that pure black is actually a really good shade to use for red. I've used that in none of the minis I have up here, but in a lot of the minis I did for Malifaux. I used that effect and then just shade it back up, highlight it back up with red, and it works really well with a black shade. Okay. Oh, John, you might actually also want to see this base here. If I can get it to focus. This was actually a 40mm base that I scaled down. The very, very bright thing right behind him is actually a shield. And there's a rib cage, a hand, a skull, and then some really I think really, really well done couples. There's a lot of height differences between them without them being sort of cartoonishly large. They may be a little bit small for couples or cobblestones, from if a human is walking on it, but I did scale it down from 40 millimeters to 25 millimeters. Even so, it came out really well from the printer. Even to the point where the part of the shield, if I can get it angled, is kind of hanging over the side over here. Was actually transparent because it was so thin, but it's there. The last base we're working with today is this one, which is also one I got for free in the same set as this one here. I haven't actually checked if it's the same. No, it doesn't appear to be the same core model they've used for the rocks, which is really good because that means that it's not recognizable as the same. But this one obviously needs a lot of shading and highlighting. But I just liked it, and I felt this would be the perfect base for a dwarf cleric. So, cool. Anywho, on to... Yeah, that's for the paint. I'm actually gonna go black shading on his hair. Or maybe skip that or leave it later on and give it some contrast paint, because it does have black hair and I really want it to be high contrast hair. So I don't want to paint it black and then shade it up. I'd much rather just shade it down. So it's gonna be a little bit like this, with a lot of the bright parts shining through. So someone ate my brown paint as well. I mean, I swear someone must be messing up my desk, because I would never leave it in such a mess. Also, shake your paints. Actually, for shaking the paints, the cats are messing up. Yeah, well, they are a little bit, but they're surprisingly good at not doing anything to the miniatures. Oh yeah, they definitely are painting when I'm not here, but they are pretty indifferent to the miniatures themselves. But the bases, I mean, just empty bases like this, they go nuts. They dig them out from... I'm just gonna pan around a little. Got them over there somewhere in between all the miniatures over here. I've got some loose bases lying around, and they just keep going for them, keep finding them, digging them out, throwing them on the floor and playing with them. Also, John, I don't know if you have a shaker for your paints. I got one of the cheap Chinese ones at some point, just in a standard tattoo ink bottle shaker, and worked really, really well for about 20 minutes of shaking, and then it started breaking down. It became unstable, and when you pressed it down, it didn't really work, and sometimes it would just keep going. And that was terrible in the end, and at some point it just basically just stopped working. So I decided to buy one that cost about 3 times as much, one of the actual vortex mixers, which I believe are geared at laboratories, chemical laboratories, whatever. And I have to say, this one has worked infinitely better than the other one. There's been no problems whatsoever. They are expensive. I think they're at about $100 or so, $120, depending on where you get it and freight and all that. But I think that it's definitely worth it, having equipment you can trust to just work when you need it to work. You don't have to fiddle around with it and convince it to actually start shaking your paint. In this case, it's just Yeah. I think for me it was money well spent. Yeah, you have one of those. Is it kind of the one with kind of an oval? There's a camera, an oval platform, and then the V-shaped one. We just strap it in. I think they're the makeup bottle shakers. I had one of those as well at some point, and just yeah. The one I have here is called Joan Lab. Just show you the bottom. Basically, just search for Vortex Mixer. Yes, the box with the little V-shaped shaker. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. I had one of those, but I felt that it didn't really spin the bottle properly, which meant that it did bounce up and down or back and forth. But I kind of had to sit, and tilt it every in all the different ways to actually get it to rinse out the tip of the bottle as well, and so on. So it's yeah. Anyway, I've used this one for well over a year now, even though I don't paint as much as I should. It's proven itself. So I'm very happy with it. It's just my point. So yeah. I mean, I hear Christmas is coming up soon, so that's something for your wish list. Now again, when painting in the straps, we're gonna cheat horribly again and not paint the underside of the straps because it's already suitably dark, or at least darker than it would be with the brown here. So I want it that way to emphasize the shadows. As you can see, just adding that simple stripe. I'm gonna do the belt as well. Just that stripe really just kind of breaks the monotony of the uniformly colored armor. That was the plan. I'm kind of focused a little bit on this. I can feel that since I haven't painted in a while, I feel that my hands are less steady than they normally are. So just need to there. I also, for some reason, have let it snow on my mind. It may have something to do with a certain episode of a certain podcast I finished listening to today. Hey, Olivi Meho? Olivi? I'm gonna call you Olivi, unless you object to that, of course. And thank you. It is a mini I designed on a site called Hero Forge, where you can choose, what type of character you want to do, what gear they should be carrying, what race, elf, human, dwarf, and so on. And then you can order it either as a miniature or as what I did, a file for 3D printing. So yeah, and then you can paint it if like that. I like using that for the characters I do in games like D&D or other role-playing games, simply because you can customize so many things, like the pose and face, hair, beard, whatever. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, Emily, Bill, Olivia, we're talking about a podcast that Emily and John, who's also here, is part of, and one of them, Bill, that it's a D&D podcast called The Incorrigible Party. Yeah, I think this still works. Yay, there you go. A little shout out to them. But one of the players in the podcast actually did his first go at game mastering, and he did really, really well. I'm not going to spoil anything from the plot or what happened and anything like that, but I will say that he did a really good job. And yes, as I wrote in the shout out, they are the sweetest people around. So if you're at all interested in that, I suggest you go check that out once I'm done painting. But yeah. But Olivia, well, what brings you here? And what are you doing? Do you also paint miniatures? Do you play role-playing games, board games, anything like that? You do art and play D&D, and if you wish to DM, my absolutely best advice to you is to just do it at some point. If you have even half decent players to play with, they will not care if you mess anything up. I mean, I've been DMing for 30 plus years and I still mess things up all the time, but that's not the important part. The important part is to play, have fun, and do the collaborative storytelling. The rest are just details. But what kind of art do you do? Because that also sounds really interesting. Oh shit! If you're already in 3 campaigns and you got your hands full, definitely. That's just don't burn yourself out. That's also not fun. Actually, come to think of it, I've got well, not 3, but I would say I do have 2.5 campaigns going on at the moment. I've got a real life group where I'm currently a player, sometimes DMing as well. That we take turns, me and 2 of the others. And then I have an online one, strictly online, where we play in the we still use D&D 5e, but with a Cthulhu Mythos expansion from Sandy Peterson. And I really, really enjoy that. I mean, slapping down Lovecraftian demons in a fantasy setting, I love that. That's one of the things I love the most about the Earthbound role-playing game. So yeah. So yes, that is a very good question from Emily. What characters do you play? And do you have any favorite types of characters or ways of playing or whatever? I don't know if you can or not make a link to Instagram, but go ahead and try it, and if not, then if it gets modded, I'm sure Emily can allow it anyway. Do we have anything else that needs to be round? We need to We can do better than this. Sorry about hiding the miniature, but I need this stability to be able to do this. Cool. Let's see. That's one of the good things about people in full plate mail. They really, really don't leave a lot of things behind to be painted anything other than just metallic. It's really cool that you're drawing original characters. I can paint miniatures pretty well. I am terrible at drawing on paper. Olivier says they have one bard/warlock gnome. Sounds awesome. You adore that one. Cross-dressing monk tiefling is gay as the rainbow, and one old half-elf lady wizard. That is a very interesting group of well, no, they're not running around as a group, but that's a very good selection of characters you have going there. No. Well, a monk is kind of a fightery, combat-oriented, but in a different way from all the other ones. Bard and... was it Bard? Warlock? That's fun. There you go, Instagram link. I will just make sure and click that. I am not very active on Instagram. I've had an account there for ages. I used it a little bit at some point, but I don't know, it's just never caught on with me, but I will definitely go check it out at some point. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. There we go. Found something to do with the small straps at the front. Just clean up a little bit of this. And also, if you do like miniature painting and want to get started at some point, I can recommend. I am from Denmark, by the way, so if my English is a little off once in a while, it's just because it's not my native language, and especially when I'm a little tired, I just start mumbling. You love the spellcasting a lot. I do not know how to wield a weapon, but I know how to cast a spell. Well, that sounds very good. And Emily is the opposite. You love the weird big sharp weapons and get up in the action. Yeah. So... Emily, I'm pretty sure you both like to wield weapons and to weird them. And, oh, John says that Olivier's artwork is really nice. So that is really good. John is also a miniature painter. So he knows a thing or two about artistic expression as well. So if he says it's good, then I... No, it is good, and I will definitely enjoy checking it out later. Yeah, I'm gonna commit blasphemy and use my really fine pencil. That's the thing. In Danish, a brush, is called a pencil, which is very close to the English word pencil. So when I get tired, as I said, I call them pencils and not brushes. They're not pencils. But I have no... Oh, I got fine, thin, but not that one. Oh yeah, that one's good. I've got some cheap, thin brushes that I can mess up with metallic paint to actually do the thing here. Oh, it's super cool how people paint minis to look so cool. This is one of the things that I kind of... I don't know if I should say it or not, but I'm just going to do it anyway because I think there's some truth to it. It is fairly difficult to get started miniature painting because there's so many concepts you don't know, and how do you do this, and what's all this weird stuff, and different kinds of paint and what you use and the brushes and all that. but at the same time, just like with so many other things, like with DMing, for instance, it's... If you think your hands are not steady, I don't know if it comes through on camera, but try looking at my thumbs next to each other. That's about as steady as my hands are, and I can still paint minis. There are tricks to get around that, by the way. One trick is to, put your... I can't really do it. It's easier, get a handle, so you have something good to hold on. And then if you actually just put your palms together like this, then your hands may still be shaking, but they're shaking synchronized. I'm exaggerating here, so yeah. So basically, as long as they're shaking the same way, it's a lot easier to hit the areas you actually want. And other than that, there are two things. One is to just cover it up afterwards. If you make mistakes or draw outside the lines. Or you can just do what I'm terrible at doing, and that is not caring, because it is far better to paint 10 minis less than perfect and get the practice in than paint 1 minute miniature fully perfect. I'm not good at doing that. I tend to spend way too much time fixing up small mistakes when I really shouldn't. I mean, like here, the back strap. I painted a little bit into the metal part. You can't see it on the camera, I can see that here, but I can see it, and then I kind of get this... Yeah, exactly, John sums it up really well. Don't over-criticize yourself, but I get it into my head that I know that it's there, and then I can't stop fixating on it, and no one else sees it. So... oh, your eyes are failing you. Well, that may be a challenge. One thing you can do is get one of these. It is a ring light with a built-in magnifying glass. And yeah, slay the gray. That is absolutely true, John. Slay the gray, get away from all the gray unpainted miniatures and just get some paint on them. That is definitely good advice. Anyway, I am talking way too much and painting way too little. So what we're going for here is now his skin, which is maroon. I guess maroon is kind of a brownish red. Kind of. But I'm just gonna go for the red I know how to paint well. So it's more fun. Then I also don't have to mix up paints. The reference here with Slay the Grey is, of course, that... Okay. My eyes just fell out of my head because I had placed the magnifying glass the wrong place, so everything was just going wobbly on me. It's also moving, which is annoying. But that is, of course, a reference. Or not, of course, it is a reference. There's no of course about it. If you don't know, you don't know, but... It's a reference to the grey plastic that a lot of miniatures are made of. So slay the grey means basically put some paint over the grey plastic. As I said, far better to have 10 imperfectly painted miniatures than 1 perfectly painted miniatures and 9 greys. And exactly, in my practice, I'm not a big fan of the practice makes perfect, because you may never get perfect. I know I've practiced a lot of things for a long time and I'm far from perfect in them. But practice makes you better at what you do. And also never be afraid to experiment. There's a YouTube channel called Goobertown. Don't know if I've mentioned it before. I meant to mention it, but I may have forgotten. And he's really good at giving advice to beginners. He's got really great 30 minutes, it's just a 30-minute video with all the steps you need to learn to paint a miniature really well. And the way he does it, of course, he's got a lot of experience, so it looks easy when he does it, but he explains what he's doing really well, and he shows what he's doing in a way where I think it becomes very accessible. I've been painting since the mid-90s, and we didn't have things like YouTube and or even other kinds of videos there. And I never went to any of the conventions or meetups or anything where people painted. I spoke a little to a couple of my friends in high school who also painted, but I was by far the one who painted the most. So I basically had to learn on my own and from reading Games Workshop's White Dwarf magazine that had a few tips here and there. But that was all trial and error. So, but it turned out pretty decent. Even to the point where some of the things I managed to come up with on my own back then, I somehow neglected to believe enough in myself that I kept doing them, even though I had this actually feels better, but I'm not doing it, like I think I'm supposed to do it, so I better not do it like that. And I was finding out 25 years later that what I did back then and stopped doing was actually a really good thing to do is kind of hilarious at this point, but also kind of makes me sad because I figured if I'd actually gone ahead and kept doing this, again, see, it's a trick I use for steadying my hand is I actually put the brush down on my thumb, on the other thumb here, so I can just gently paint his chin that's otherwise hidden and very inaccessible, and it's right next to his shoulder plate and shoulder pad, and I don't want the shoulder pad to be red, blah blah blah. So yeah, now it was kind of weird thinking that some of the things I came up with or did, some of it by chance or mistakes or whatever, but it actually worked, and I just kind of went, no, but that isn't the way other people say they do, so I probably shouldn't, and I should just have kept doing it. One of the things in particular I remember is that I one day, instead of just painting straight from the pot, which was really the popular way of doing it with the Citadel Games Workshop paints, because they were just so easy to use. You could use them straight out of the pot. They gotta give them credit for that. But what I did is I actually, I think by accident, had a wet brush that I dipped into the paint and started painting. And I just realized how much easier it was to apply it without having the brush strokes in the paint. And then it's kind of now, I mean, that's how I paint with normal paints. I either use a wet palette that keeps it wet, and usually also just dipping the tip of the brush in water, and then the paint will add a little bit of water, making it flow better instead of trying to thin down a large amount of paint. But even so, I just kind of went, no, that's not how I think other people are doing it. I'm saying think because that's, no, I didn't know for a fact. But the few minis I actually painted like that, they had so much smoother paint on them. You feel smarter now. Well, feeling smart is good. And especially when I took up miniature painting again a few years ago, that was, everyone was, painting minis on YouTube and blah, 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 and all that. You get so much better advice and so much more advice than I had ever had before. And the first advice just come into when starting miniature painting is just thin your paints. Thin your paint, thin your paint. People will say if you have nothing else anyone tells you, don't care if you use Army Painter or Vallejo, however, I'm not even gonna go there, or Citadel paints or any of the other ones out there. Whatever brand you choose, thin your paints. They're always gonna go on about that. But no one ever told me that back in the 90s, so I never thinned my paints until quite recently. Yeah. But here we are. Oh, people saying, John is saying there's never been a better time to get into mini painting now. The popularity of RPGs, 3D printing, YouTube tutorials, and many great support sites and streams. Absolutely, 3D printing. And also, remember that I'm sitting here painting very slowly, and at a tabletop ready standard, it doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just have to be what you need it to be your miniature, and just have fun with it. As I said earlier, before you joined, about a year ago I painted another miniature, and I really wanted to get some details right in shading some spikes growing out of this Chaos Warrior's body or whatever. I spent 3 or 4 hours on a couple of spikes just to get the shading and highlighting right, to just fade from dark to bright. And I had so much fun doing that. And it doesn't matter that I'm never going to play with the miniatures, just testing out techniques, just trying out how and then I ended up with the highlighting, saying I really want to do the color gradient and just slowly blend from a dark purple, I think it was, to an almost white or sort of bony white. I had so much fun just toying around with that. And it doesn't matter that it took 3 or 4 hours and that I never used the mini for anything. The important thing was I learned something from it and I had fun. So yeah. So Olivier says that mostly they've enjoyed so far. What they have enjoyed so far about D&D is making stories and characters. Of course, role-playing and meeting new people too. Yeah, definitely. When I'm asked to describe what is D&D, I tend to always just say that it's collaborative storytelling. And to some people it is, to some people play in different ways. But all in the end, a lot of stories come out of it. Even in groups that have very much focus on just doing the combat-oriented, dungeon crawly style, just, classic old legacy style D&D, just running around slaying monsters in dungeons, finding treasure. Even there, that causes a lot of stories to happen. I mean, you have the memories of the fights and that orc that just wouldn't go down because everyone kept missing it by random chance or whatever. That's so much fun. And then you have the sessions where you don't roll a single dice for 4 hours and just chat and describe what your characters are doing and interacting with people and all of that things. That's so much fun. Yeah, and Olivia has noticed more creative stuff going around. I think that's because we're exposed to more things. So if you feel overwhelmed what you should do next, just pick whatever. You're a creative person, like to create and do stuff myself. So D&D was one of the best things that happened to me. I am so glad to hear that. I'm glad you had the positive experience with that. You learned to be even more creative, and I could share it with others with the same minds. That is wonderful. I am so glad to hear that. Cheers. Okie dokes. And John, I know I said I shouldn't be nitpicky with fixing all the mistakes, but this one here is actually visible on camera, so just a little bit of red going down on his armor. That would not pass inspection in the morning with the old drill sergeant. Better fix that. Okay, that is a good story again right there. Olivia's writing that they don't care what happens in D&D, they just want to share a story and make it with others. Don't care if my character loses his arms, I just want to have fun. And yes, my Thiefling monk has lost both of his arms because I'm an idiot. I don't know if you're an idiot, I don't think you are, but losing both arms, that's awesome. And it isn't, you know what I mean, but it's a great story. And right there, what you have in just 1 or 2 sentences, that is storytelling. You're telling me a story and I enjoy it. I laugh at it, laugh with you, not at you. And it's just fun. And that's what you get from games like D&D or other role-playing games. So yeah, that's cool. What we need here is I'm actually reminded of one of my old characters. It's one of my favorite stories to share, mainly because of the punchline. I had a character, and it deals a little bit with that, about metagaming and playing with knowledge you have as a player, but your character shouldn't have. And we try to teach ourselves to not do that, because it's more fun. It limits the storytelling when you're doing it, really. So my character, Tika, a troubadour in the Earthdawn system, is running around being really worn out after a 2 or 3 week hike through the mountains where we didn't have enough to eat, we didn't have enough food, drink, whatever, nothing like that. So we're just worn down, and we finally get to where we're going, which is basically into a dungeon of some kind, blah blah blah, the usual. And at some point, the shadows come to life and spring out of the wall and start attacking us. And then some of the others push on into the next room, trigger a trap, which is basically a scythe at the height of your neck. And I'm there, and poor little Tika, who's not the sturdiest of people to begin with, and definitely not after all of this, I decided that, seeing the shadows come out of the walls basically just spooked her to hell and back. So she just needed to get away from it. She just ran through this doorway. And of course she triggered the trap as well, because it's there and keeps getting triggered. I knew that was going to happen. The entire party knew it was going to happen, but Tika didn't, and I did it anyway. And that is, of course, a suboptimal move, but it's the right thing to do. And the fun part of the story is that she actually took so much damage from this, and I knew she would, that she had her head chopped off. Which is, of course, a bad thing to happen to you, but don't worry, she got better. That's kind of the punchline. Please laugh so I don't feel like an idiot. That's good. But basically the thing is, it's a memorable moment, and we can all remember it, especially because our game master, he was really good at trying to keep us alive and not make it too deadly, stuff like that. Well, it was a little bit too deadly once in a while, but he did that. And I remember sitting in the couch, and he was just leaning forward. I was sitting next to him. He was leaning forward to look out over his screen to see how many hit points I had left. But since I didn't want him to pull punches, I actually wanted him to just give me the damage. I just slapped my foot down physically on my sheet to block off that information, and just forcing him to roll the dice without knowing how much damage I had left, how many hit points I had left. So we did, and I took, 40 whatever points of damage, and that killed me. Good thing about the Earthdawn universe, though, or system, is that you have something called a last chance bomb. You just slap on someone who just died, and there are no death saves in Earthdawn. If you're at 0 points, you're dead. So 0 hit points left, you're dead. And I was. But the last chance bomb allows you to make a small roll, a bit like using your hit dice, to see how many hit points you regain. And if that brings you above 0, you just barely make it, and you're still alive. And I did. I came back with 1 hit point left, or something like that. Maybe 2 or 3. It doesn't matter. More fun to say 1, and it's the same effect. So yeah. Oh shit, you're busy in chat. I will read up at some point, but working with shades, as they call thin down paint here, it's best to just finish doing it all in one go. Otherwise, it's gonna be difficult getting it to look even later on. But I'll catch up on chat in a little bit. And you'll also note that I'm shading all of the model in the same color, namely black. But that is because it clearly works well with the armor. but it also works well with both the red and the, there goes my brain, the brown leather straps. They both benefit from a black shade. So that's good. That means I can just slap it on quite generously and it will just sort itself out. That's a good tip always when painting minis. Whenever you can cheat, cheat. If there's some effect that makes it easier to paint or quicker to paint and gives a good result, go for it. I talked a while back with some of the people who was an army painter when they did the it's actually kind of a varnish they used, like furniture varnish or floor varnish for dipping miniatures. We take the entire miniature, dip it into this bucket of varnish, and you just fling the miniature out in open air really hard, so the paint gets the varnish gets flung off. It makes a mess, so don't do it in your living room. It makes a huge mess, but it's so effective. And they did that, and they won a lot of awards for, you know, best painted army, because they did it to bulk paint all their armies. They just did a really simple 3-color or so paint job on the miniatures, dipped them, flung them off, left them to dry, and that was it. So they could go through an entire army incredibly fast. And he told me that after they'd won, and people said, "Oh, but how do you get it so consistently well?" And it's really, they looked a little nitty gritty, because all of them get kind of a brownish sheen to them. So people went, "It's a little nitty gritty, but it looks really cool. How do you do that?" And then they explained how they did it, and people started accusing them of cheating. And I just went, that's not cheating. That's just, as I said, sometimes cheating is okay. It is, and it's just a paint technique. I mean, if people go, "Oh, you're not allowed to dip and fling," okay, so we should only have like, what, 3 colors? You know, the primary colors, maybe white and black, to give a little bit of shade. Or when does it become cheating to have a technique you use? Are we not allowed to use dry brushing? Can we use shades? Whatever. And so yes, I mean, maybe for some tournaments I could see an argument for, we want to have people, oh, hang on, a lot of smudging in my paint pot. You can have a non-dip entry in a tournament. Sure, why not? Then just like you could have one where you can only use, you know, like in the speed painting mini contest or whatever, where we have limited time. You could also have limited techniques. I'm fine with that if that's sort of clearly specified in the rules in advance. Then that's fine. That's just, you know, the format. But anyway, I think I got through all of it. Now I hope you can see here how much a little bit of shade does for a miniature, especially the hair. The face is gonna need some fixing up with a small brush later on, but it really just sort of enhances the shadows and brings out all the layering of the armor here. And I think it looks good on camera. It looks even better when I'm holding it. This is gonna be fun to bring to the table next time we play. But shades need to dry for a long time, so we're putting him away for now. And going back to this dude that we actually gave a lot of paint, a lot of shade before, he needs some. Thank you, Olivier. Yeah, I think it does look good. And you can see the switch from shaded, unshaded to shaded gives a lot of contrast in the miniature. And it does not take long, and it's not something that requires you to be very focused when you do it. It's just a matter of just cleaning up. If it starts pooling a little bit too much, you just clean it up a little bit with the brush and just drag it out, the shade. But other than that, it really just fixes itself. And it adds so much to the miniature in terms of being able to see the raised areas of the miniature, and that's what people notice. When I'm talking about tabletop ready standards or quality, I mean that it has to look good when it's standing on the table, which means that it has to look good if you keep it out at an arm's length away, somewhere between 50 centimeters and a meter, or 2 to 3 feet if you're using Imperial systems still. Oh, that's a lot in chat. I need to go back. Sorry, I got started on you. I'm doing more shading before I read the chat. I apologize for that. But it seems like you're having fun, so that's good. The concept with this dude here is that he's wearing black leather armor. And I wanted to try out a technique where I actually don't paint it black and then shade it, or sort of highlight it back up. I really just wanted to do what's called a Sentinel Highlight, where I use my airbrush to add some shades and coloring on the overall level of the miniature. And then I wanted to just use the shades to tone down the miniature again, giving it a slightly darker look, making it almost black, but still leaving the raised areas fairly white. So I don't have to highlight it later on to see if it is workable. And it is kind of doable like this, but it probably needs at least one more coat of shade before it really works. This one did a lot. I mean, now we're at the point where it actually becomes a dark miniature instead of a bright miniature with some darkness. So yeah. Oh, the face. Forgot the face. There we go. A little bit more on top there. So he's basically just gonna... I'm gonna fill in later on with some color on this dude. Again, the leather straps and all that. Which I probably could have gotten away with doing before. Maybe I should do that before I give it the last layer of shading. It's probably a good idea. So chat. Her head got chopped off, but don't worry, she got better. Yeah, exactly, and that's the stories you get. said, Olivia said, I died, but I lived, and Emily says, in Emily's home group, Emily has a half-orc barbarian that is good aligned. Magic sword, and the owner asked for it back. John was DMing and expected a fight, but since my character is good, he just handed it over, shocking everyone else. I love that. That's a wonderful story. It kind of just... You should never actively derail a DM's campaign just for the sake of derailing it. But if you can do something like that, and just kind of go, oh, but, what? That's fun. That's again, the shared story and there's troubleshooting and all that, but in a different way that anyone expects, which means that for the DM, that also suddenly becomes an interesting game because they don't really know what's going to happen now. And John says that they've started letting the DM make their death saves behind the screen, which I think, as well, personally, is a really good idea. It really adds to the fun, John says. I should start doing that. Yeah, definitely fun surprises. You don't know how many death saves they have made or failed. And Olivia says that now they really want to paint a mini, but it's like 10 p.m. Stores are closed. Yeah. Well, that's gonna wait until tomorrow. So yeah, if it's 10 p.m., it's 9:30 here in Denmark. So I'm guessing, yeah. Oh, Finland. Oh, you woke up at 5 p.m. today. Ooh. Yeah. My sleeping schedules are a bit of a wreck as well. I tend to stay up until 2 a.m. Usually playing computer games with various people I know in the US. Yeah, let's just keep going on this. But yeah, so Finland. I should have guessed. The double I should have been a dead giveaway. That's awesome. I know one Finnish person at the moment, I think. Fortunately, not anymore. The Finns I've met have all been really, really wonderful people. So the thing I'm doing here is the base for another character. Not one of the ones I've been painting, because the dwarf that was sitting on this base had a bit of an accident when I 3D printed him, so I'll do a new one tomorrow. And it just needs to stand here. And again, the trick for doing this, I've found for making what I think is good looking rocks, is to just paint them in a sort of bluish gray to begin with. And also do kind of the navy ships kind of gray. Your name translated to olive juice, as I'm in front of. Okay. That's cool. You played Uno until 4 AM last night. That's not bad. Do you play online or physically with people? No, but anyway, the way to do this with the rocks here is to basically just paint it in a bluish gray, slap on way more shading than you would ever think is possible. You're really making it pool, because when it dries out, it fails. It's a kind of sort of subtracts down into the recessed areas, giving it a really nice dark base. And then I just dry brush it heavily. Up and into first more in a little bit of the blue gray, and then up onto a plain white, so you got some really sharp contrast there. I do not really have any painted miniatures here, because my table is filled of gray minis that should be painted. I basically have all the minis from the Bloodborne board games here, but I don't think I'll ever actually finish it, because the game wasn't all that fun, to be honest. Oh, purple gray for rocks. I have to try that. Okay, so you played Uno on Steam until 4 AM. That is awesome. So yeah, okay, so technically this character is supposed to have black hair. It turned kind of white, but I like it. Does that make sense? I think I'm just gonna change his hair color in game. Probably gonna be easier. But I'm also going to fix up his face. Yeah, because now we come to the fun part of highlighting the red, so it looks good. Because right now, if we can look at his face there, it looks very dark and not very red. I mean, it's a pretty decent reddish color for a tiefling, but I want to have the red more visible. So I'm gonna do some highlighting there. And again, thinking back to the 90s, a lot of the highlighting I did back then, I only did that by dry brushing. And dry brushing good shades on sort of larger areas is next to impossible. And you asked if when tieflings have white hair. They don't as such have. There's a list of usual hair colors for them. I don't know if white is one of them, but I don't think it would be a problem that it's white. I think they can basically be any color. I mean, tieflings are my understanding, a variant of, well, I shouldn't say variant human because that's a thing in D&D. That's a thing in itself. But it's a human bloodline that's been tainted by devilish dealings in the past. So essentially, this is a human where born of human parents, but the devil blood or devilish demon blood, whatever, in that bloodline just showed up when he was born, turning him into a tiefling. So they have the tail, they have usually red skin, but other than that, they are basically humans, from what I understand, meaning that they have no hair color like humans. I think they don't have any pupils, so their eyes are kind of funky. But speaking of eyes and painting miniatures, I almost never paint in the eyes because at best they're gonna look like googly eyes, the ones you can put on stuff like cover of a book or whatever, and then when you shake it, the pupil just bounces around. Yeah, they don't have pupils, just one single color. His color, they are sort of a deep olive, his eyes, and a maroon colored skin. But I can't actually remember the hair, but I think the hair, as I said, since they're effectively come from a human bloodline, I think it should be good with white hair. And basically, I don't really care because I think it looks good in the miniature, so I'm gonna leave it in. So now this part here is still something I'm learning to do, the highlights and where to apply them, because then you actually have to think a little bit about where you're painting. Now his jawline is of course something that needs to be highlighted back up because that's sort of an edge, but his cheeks, finding the right place, what part of the cheek should be colored, what should be left as the shadow, all that. I am still very much learning that, because then you just can't just simply cheat and let the shading, the shade, the thin down paint do the work for you. I actually have to make some choices. It's going fairly well. I was going to get the ears just a little bit. Of course, I messed up his hair. That's fine. If anyone sees that and complains, I'm just going to charge them and beat them with this very big sword he's got handy right here. So, and then we have the neck, just a little bit. I mean, you can use the general contours of the miniature to see what is most likely to be painted, and it's never a bad thing to just look at the miniature a little bit from the top and see if you can see it from the top. It probably should be painted. If you can't see it from the top, it should be in shadow. And then you have the extremes, the highlight and the shade, and then you can work between those two areas, depending on the miniature. But this really fixed up the face a lot. Just a few minutes of highlighting. And again, I'm using a thin brush, I'm dipping it in water, and I'm using the already fairly thin red paint. So even if I do cover some of the darker areas, it doesn't cover it completely, which means that the shadows are left there a bit, but the already white highlights get a little bit more red, meaning that they stand out as more highlighted. Doing the same for the tail here. And that's a technique I couldn't do back in the 90s because I didn't know that you could do highlights like this. No one told me. Kind of seems like someone should have told me, but I never sought out that kind of information, from just lack of being able to ask the right questions. So I'm just working on my own. As I said before, I mainly use dry brushing to do all my highlights. And dry brushing a tail like this would give terrible results, really. Would be very uneven, and it would not give sort of a smooth transition from the dark areas to the brighter areas. John says, I've been told to break the face into 3 parts. Top is the lighter skin tone, middle cheeks are red, and the lower part of the face is more blue shadow. That makes sense. If you just look at photographs of people, that's kind of the best way to look at a lot of, not portrait photos, because they tend to be in perfect lighting, so you get a lot of light and very few sort of natural shadows, because the photographer wants to show your face. But take other photos and just look at it, and you'll see that, as John says, it really becomes kind of bluish in the shade at the bottom, or at least very sort of actually kind of vibrant color. Definitely not black. I mean, I'm painting a red-skinned character here, so everything from the real world is kind of out the window. But I think that did it pretty well for the tail. It doesn't look good, when I look at it from on the underside of the tail, but that doesn't matter, because he's going to be standing on a table, running around, killing demons. That being said, the tip needs a little bit more work here, because it's actually pointing up a little bit. So we're saying that you are a nice person and give special traits to my characters, like gnome bodies and albinos. She burns in the sun and has super pale eyes. And I have one character waiting to be played who has cerebral palsy. Oh wow! The legs was twisted since birth, making them slower, and they have to use a cane for walking. You can get so much personality out of that. I know cerebral palsy is a terrible disease and affliction, but adding that gives a lot. And it makes, for me, the characters can come so much more alive when they have traits like that. It gives them basically just personality. Look at everyone around us. We all have our quirks, and we have our ailments. We have our weird ways of being. We have our good ways, bad ways, reaction patterns, and all that. The one thing I'm kind of getting a little tired of from time to time is when players make completely bland characters. Either no backstory or just a very simple I grew up here kind of backstory, and put something in it. So yeah. Okay, so cool. What should we do next? I think we're kind of getting there. I want to paint in a lot of drop on his shield, but I hope I can find some kind of sticker, small sticker, or transfer or whatever, something like that, because this is crazy. He has horns. We need to do something about the horns. Yeah, flaws make the character for me, says John. That's true. And Olivia wants to give the characters normal people problems. Gives them more personality, makes them easier to play. Absolutely. Makes them stand out, makes them rememberable, makes them relatable as well. I think that went pretty well so far. And again, if you look at it, it's really simple. A little bit of red on the skin, a little bit of brown on the straps, and the rest is just a dry brushed metal color. The hair is just a remnant from I did the priming, where I do the Sentinel, which I'm guessing you don't know what is, Olivia. So it's basically you start by painting the miniature black, and then you, towards the zenith of the sun, you apply a thin coat of brighter and brighter and brighter gray until you finally have white almost from the top. That simulates the bright light coming down from the top, making the raised parts of the miniature, like the top of his head and the shoulders, making them white. Everything in between is kind of a gray, and then from the bottom, you can see it a lot better on some of these other miniatures that I have here. So this dude here, kind of white from the top, and then you can see it gets more gray, and if you look in from the bottom, it's more dark. This wasn't actually done with full black as the core. I think it's just basically, I think you can see kind of the point, especially if I'm tipping him like this. It's a big model, so the natural light here, yeah, I paint from dark to light. Actually, I paint from the middle coat first, and then I shade it down, and then I highlight it back up to the middle and then up to the highlights. But when you're doing it with the airbrush, yes, you start with the black, and then you just apply sort of gray from here all over, and then you go up and do a light gray, a little 45 degrees angle, and you do plain white, straight from the top. That's a quick, simple 3-step, 4-step way of doing it. You can do it more. You can do the gradient really, really easily with an airbrush. You can just do it with black as a core priming all over, and just use the white and just apply more and more paint the higher you go. That also works really well. I like to add a gray step in the middle because it just makes it easier. I think this shows it off quite good as well, because you have a lot of sort of vertical surfaces here, and then you have the tip, which should be a little bit brighter, but yeah. But when you have that, you naturally have a little bit of shading, or have a bit of natural shading, which I had in the hair, and then I just added the black shade to this, and that made the hair come out awesome, I think. So again, cheating. If you can cheat, cheat. Okay, so your friend is ready to play some Uno, so you need to go. I definitely gotta get some Uno under your belt. Thank you. I appreciate you joining. It's been fun meeting you, and feel free to come back. I don't have a regular schedule anymore, but I would like to have it at some point. So, but anyway, stay tuned. See you. Now for the horns. We are going. See you. How do we do? We need. What do we have? No gold horns. No. We need. I need skin color for horns. I need a pale skin color, because that actually works quite well for bones. And I'm shading it down a little bit and then heavily highlighting up. I think I'm gonna finish doing that, and then the base probably tomorrow. It's getting late here. That was pleasant having Olivia around. Finland is a country that I have never been to, but that I'd like to go to at some point. I think it has some really wonderful towns and cities, but also some absolutely amazing nature that I'd love to see. There we go with the shaky hands. What I'm mostly worried about up here is messing up the hair. Fjords. I think Finland is called the country of 1,000 lakes, I think. I think fjords are more a Norwegian thing. Okay, so I know that the horns are actually gonna be looking a little bit pink, because I'm using a pale skin tone to paint them, but I'm gonna shade and highlight the fuck out of them anyway. So I just want this to be the transition, and I don't want them to be fully white to begin with, because that never works out too well for what I'm trying to do. No, Finland is... If you have Scandinavia, you have little Denmark, then you have Sweden going up, then you have the Baltic Ocean. Then Finland is on the other side and up to the north, between the Baltic Ocean and Russia. And underneath Finland, you have the Baltic states, Estland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Estland, Letland, and Litauen. Litauen would be Lithuania, so Estland would be Estonia, Letland, Latvia. It's called Latvia. There we go. I do know a little bit of geography, and I can actually find the English names for things once in a while. But Emily, if you ever get a chance to go to Norway, you should. There's so much beautiful nature up there. In fact, there's so much beautiful nature in Scandinavia in general. You definitely should come visit. Okay, this is killing my shoulders. But you have to suffer for your art, don't you? You're gonna come here for an entire year, Emily. And you're gonna see all of Europe. You're gonna visit me, visit Brit, meet the cats. Gonna hang out, gonna have fun, go to a lot of board game conventions, and see the sights. Yes! John, quit your job and come to Europe. Or better yet, convince your boss that you should be working remotely. So, I need shades. I need more shades. I need... How dark do I want the roots to be on the horns? Well, internet access, Emily, in Europe is actually really, really good. Yes, oh, John, that would be awesome. A board game travel YouTube channel. Just visit all the board game cafes in Europe. We have... six-ish board game cafes that I know of here in Denmark alone. Now, you should do an episode on each, so I need to find the right shade and tone for the horns. I'm tempted to go dark tone, but since everything here is black already, I might just go for that one there. Okay. Well, Emily is in, and I'm sure you can convince your boss that it's a good idea. So I'm gonna watch the house. Let's go. Cool. So I mean, until I get everything settled in, I can just sleep on the couch, and you can get the bedroom. I have a nice large bed, and you just stay here. I mean, I do have cats, but I'm guessing you can live with that. And if you hurry, you can be here for New Year's. Oh, you're allergic to cats. Ah, that's might gonna be a bit of a problem if it's a bad allergy. I had a friend over once this summer who really wanted to meet the cats and hang out and all that, but she has a combination of severe allergies and asthma. And she had told me, but she's also told me that she would be, taking her pills so that it should be fine. But then later she told me that her lungs had hurt for a few days after, and I felt so bad. So terrible. Yes, John, definitely need full list of the board game cafes. I actually remember at some point back in the Bastard Cafe speaking to some people who were visiting from Finland that wanted to open board game cafe, and they came there for inspiration and talk about what challenges they'd had and all of that. Get some good advice. They're really, really friendly people also. Okay, so that turned into brown horns, which is good because as long as you don't rub my eyes around them, you'd be okay. Okay, well, I'm sure we can make that work. And now we have to wait for the shade to dry. Going reasonably well with this dude. So over to this thing here. We need to shade it back up a little bit. Okay. Here we can use the makeup brushes. Oh, I forgot to mention that while Olivia was still here. That's always a good thing. Telling people that you use makeup brushes for miniature painting. There we go. So that smoothed out the shading a lot. I love working with dry brushing like this because it's just so freaking easy. It's almost cheating. But hey, what do we know about cheating and miniature painting? If you can cheat, cheat. Yes. Or as one of my friends and fellow role players tend to say, it is only cheating if you're caught. I gotta try the purplish gray rocks at some point. Sounds very good. Yeah, that's a good point. John says that he assumes they can stay in each country for 90 days on their passport, so you just need to move around. Yeah, and I mean, 90 days in Denmark, you'll definitely have seen all of it. If you take the first, 90 days, let's go, what, 10, 15 countries? Only, what, 3, 4 years? You should stay longer. Just added a little bit of white to the blue-gray. Get it even more clear that these are rocks. Now we're gonna add some more white. It's kind of sad. I mean, I spent more time mixing the paint than I actually do dry brushing it. But yeah, you circle back. I mean, at some point, if you've been here for a few years, you could probably, yeah, just go back to countries and start over. It wouldn't count, I guess. At some point, they have to reset the counter. I'm guessing you can't just go, you know, across the border and straight back and then it would be reset, but yeah, I don't know. Could also do Michael Palin of board games. Yeah, there's so many other travel shows. You know, going to restaurants or whatever, or just, you know, seeing the sights, meeting the animals. But yeah, board game travel channel. That would be cool. 100 heirs. Well, Emily, find the right currency. At 100 heirs is pretty decent. So here we basically wiped out most of the blue, so it's not really blue. I mean, it still has a blue tint and a slight blue feel to it, but it doesn't look blue when you just see it first. That's what I like about painting. It really goes weird. That was a bad way of saying it. What I like is that it, you know, you build up from one color to the next, and weird things happen where things change color in ways or lose or gain color that it's not normally clear that should happen. Shit, I am getting tired. Thank you for being patient. So I'm just gonna give it the last bit here. Actually, John, maybe you know this. The problem I had with the miniature, I'll just show you, is something I've had a few times before, and it happens too often for me to really like that. What happened here is that, I don't know if you can see his left leg, that one there, is kind of, he's missing his knee. It's as if a part of the leg wasn't printed. I'm guessing it's just stuck to the sheet or something, or it falls off. But there was no sort of large lumps left over. It's kind of just like, you can also see it a little bit on his coat hanging down, that is missing a huge chunk out of it. So I don't know why that is. I don't know what to do about my printer to prevent doing that. But it's kind of annoying that it happens on, I would say, every 2 or 3 prints I have something like this, which is also why I'm always, you know, make more than one miniature. So I don't know. I've, you know, gone through a lot of different prints with a lot of different settings. I found something that usually works, but once in a while it's just as if it won't really properly let go. Is there support in that area? That is a really good question. There should be, but I am using auto support, so I need to go check it. And also, the other one I printed, I probably already chucked it out. Didn't have the same problem, but yeah, definitely must be something support related. How did I print him? He was printed upside down, tilted a little bit like this. So yeah, I need to go back. I don't do manual supports. I should learn to do that properly. That's may just be the answer to that. And yeah, thank you. and now we just need a little bit of white. Yeah, the angle and the supports and getting all of that. I tend to try and align them so they don't go too much out, too flat out to the side, and keep them going downwards. You supported minis, you set your exposure time up a little. Yeah. I actually did that on this batch, but maybe I should just do it more. I probably just need to experiment more with it. It's just... it just takes a lot of time. And I want the minis to be done. So the final dry brush here is just plain white. Still has a little bit of the gray left in the brush. But this is when it really, really pops, because you get all the edges. Oh, there we go. I am very happy with this base now. There was a skull somewhere. Teeny tiny skull. That just to add a little bit of edge and attitude, I am going to shake down that skull to just make it stand out a little bit. There are so many things to tweak, says John, on the topic of 3D printers. Based on the type of resin, temperature of the room, and exposure time. Exactly. I'm using the Elegoo Mars 2 Pro. I think that's the order. Mars 2 Pro, yeah. And one of the things about it and the way it works is that you actually have to lower the exposure times a lot. The resin I use, also from Elegoo, to just start at the same people. It actually says 6 to 8 seconds on the bottle of resin, but looking at it and looking at other people, I ended up going at about 2 seconds per layer because it makes sense. And yeah, the point you have there sometimes, says John, I run the same print a few times without changing the settings and get different results. That's very frustrating. I agree completely, John. Doing the same settings and stuff like that and not getting the same result annoys the hell out of me, because that means I can't just go, oh, I need these 5 different minis, slap them down, do one print, run it out, and expect it to come out as it should. Which is why I tend to make more than one of each mini, because they'll fail in different times, in different ways. You had 1.8 exposure time. Okay, I've saw a lot of these things happening when I had like 5-6 seconds of exposure. So I was thinking that it kind of got stuck, and that may tie in with the support thing, that it gets stuck on the film, the FEP film, and then when it tries to pull up again, it doesn't really let go, and then instead of letting go, it kind of breaks the supports and doesn't do it well until it gets to a point where it works. So that it became a lot better when I lowered the exposure time. I think I did some with 1.5 seconds, and that messed up completely. So I think that was too low, but I haven't really gone in between. I'm gonna do a run tomorrow and go for, I'm gonna check the supports to see that it makes sense, and then I'm gonna go for something else. Yeah, I messed up the first FEP I had fairly quickly. Not surprisingly, I was really experimenting, and since I had the really long exposure times, I think that really did some damage to the FEP. And I would have, every time I had printed in the beginning, there would be things, large areas or large plates of resin stuck to the FEP that I had to scrape off and rinse off. Bend it a little bit so it loosens up. I think that was not good for it. But after I changed the FEP and added a new one, it turned out a lot better, but yeah. I cannot figure out what color would be best for the horns. So yeah. But that being said, I mean, I have not used my printer in about 4 or 5 months now. So just taking it down from the shelf, I don't have a fixed workplace for it. So taking it down from shelf, putting it up, adding resin, and printing straight out, straight from the shelf, basically. I'm amazed that anything worked, really. So in that sense, I'm gonna call today a success. It's just annoying that one of the miniatures didn't come out well. So for the horns, we just found a sort of grayish brown. This one here is one of the Panzer Aces. It's one of the series from Vallejo, whatever, where they do a lot of World War II colors that fits them. And this is from the Africa Corps tank divisions or whatever. But it has a kind of a nice bony feel to it, a bone-colored feel to it. So mixing that up with white usually goes well. So where did my brush go? It's here. Just getting that one up, a little bit of white. So let's see if it's actually visible. I'm gonna be selfish and go more for being able to see what I'm doing here than the camera getting a good view. What I'm also trying to do here is to actually not paint all the way out to the edges of the horns, leaving a little bit of very high contrast shadow there. You know, from first the skin color I used, followed by the shading. I find that it gives a little bit something, an effect a little similar to cell shading, sort of cartoonish, over-exaggerated outline of the different areas, but that helps when you're looking at the miniature from far away. I mean, that was just one go at highlighting, and it's already looking good, but why stop there? I want these to actually go from, you know, dark, the really dark, and then shift quickly up into the high, the bright ones which we have now. Then I want to keep highlighting in multiple steps until I get the tips of the horn nice and just almost white. But that means mixing in white with the other paint, and yeah, it's probably going well. And this is where it kind of tricks me a little bit that I'm using the magnifying glass, because I can actually see the layers of paint that I'm putting down here. So it doesn't always look good in the magnifying glass, but when you then take it out and just look at it, it looks wonderful because you can't see the layers. I mean, wet blending, I've never done that. Never tried it, but I think it's too small of an area to really be good for wet blending. The paint would dry up too quickly, I guess. So yeah, there we go. Next layer down. Now, what I said before about the spikes and the Chaos Warrior I did last year, taking 3 or 4 hours, I learned a lot from doing that about the process of highlighting and how to do it without messing up all the time. So I'm hoping this doesn't turn into a 4-hour session for the 2 horns. I don't think it should. And if it doesn't, that means I learned something from the other experiment. Yeah, there we go. And I'm now actually so tired that I see this sort of metallically painted miniature and I expect it to be metal, thus heavier than it really is. So I am definitely going to stop when I've finished the horns here. And for the last bit here, I'm just going to do the almost white thing, but just breaking the white just a little bit with the last color, and that works well. No, but Emily, it's not 4 o'clock. It's actually 10:15. So you're tired by proxy. And yeah, I saw you laughing, John. It's kind of hilarious. But I guess it shows that the metallic effect kind of works. I actually think it works really well. Oh man, I wanna paint the base and just finish this miniature now. But yeah, shit. Let's see that without. Okay, I'm gonna say something I don't often say. I'm good at doing this. That turned out beautifully. And there Bill shows up to agree that I am good at this. There we go. I could not find the horns that I really wanted in Hero Forge, but these were the closest. Sorry. So yeah, this is where we are. You've been lurking and listening while you're packed for tomorrow. Oh, it's tomorrow you're leaving. Right. I saw one thing that needs a... Bill, I really hope you have a wonderful trip. There we go. That was it. Vacation! Yes. So Bill, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I have a nephew, my sister's son, and his dad, they're not together anymore, but his dad is from Haiti, which is on the same island as the Dominican Republic. So, it's from that part of the world. So yeah. This is, this went well. I'm really pleased with this. That looks good. So anyway, that will be it for tonight. I will see if we can go rate anyone interesting. This is so much easier with a computer that actually works. Do we have anyone? Nah. You know what? There's not anyone interesting online, so I'm just gonna say thank you for showing up. It has been, as always, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining, and we had a visitor from Finland that was very active in chat. I hope to see them again. That would be wonderful. Oh, right, Loosapalooza is online. We will go rate them. Let's see if I can get that to work. I'm tempted to not rate them on the grounds that they have an ad in front of the video, but we'll be nice and do it anyway. So, thank you for tuning in. I will see you next time.